We are going to be getting more specifics from NBC's Chuck Todd in just a minute in terms of what each of the campaigns is aiming at tonight in terms of who they need to win over demographically. But, you know, the candidates, as individual humans, they can't tailor their message to any specific groups tonight. They are talking to the whole country at once. They are maybe talking to the largest audience they will get at any time during the campaign. So they need to be focused not on individual parts of the electorate. They need to be focused on policy and on where they need to persuade people on the issues. In the latest NBC Wall Street Journal poll, this is how people say they trust each of these candidates on the issues. President Obama has his biggest advantage over Mr. Romney on the issue of taking care of the middle class, as you see here. He's also strong on handling the situation in the Middle East and on the issue of immigration, which Mr. Romney has been struggling with a little bit recently as his position has been changing just in the past couple of weeks. On Medicare, the Republicans had been ahead or even with the Democrats not long ago, but today President Obama leads on Medicare by 12 points. Leads on Medicare by even more than he's ahead on health care in general. It's also interesting that the president's Middle East number specifically is 10 points higher than his advantage over Mr. Romney on the broad issue of foreign policy. But then we get into some real contested ground. The president is favored on the issue of taxes, but on the generic question of who would be better trusted to handle the economy, Mr. Romney leads by 3. On the deficit, Mr. Romney leads by 9. On all of these issues, that's the one on which he has the strongest trust from voters as compared with President Obama. And that confidence in Mr. Romney on the deficit turns up not just in the NBC Wall Street Journal poll, but in a lot of national polls, even though, as we've been talking about, he hasn't given a lot of details as to how he would handle the deficit as an issue. Ultimately, though, the bottom line, what's important to me looking at this, there is no question as to who you would rather be here, right? You would rather be President Obama than Mitt Romney looking at these numbers. That plus 19 advantage that the president has on looking out for the middle class, that is a death knell for Mr. Romney's campaign if he cannot turn that around. But I think looking ahead to tonight's debate, there is a real opportunity in the huge disconnect in the electorate in a way that reflects a real risk for President Obama. There's this huge disconnect between Mr. Obama's best number with voters and one of his worst numbers, which is that the President Obama has so far not been able to persuade people to connect these two ideas, right? He has not been able to persuade people that doing right by the middle class, where he does great, actually is the way you fix the economy. So in other words, yeah, heading into this first debate, Mr. Romney may seem like an out-of-touch rich guy who's going to be bad for the average American. But people still think that maybe a Thurston Howell-type figure might be what we need to get the economy in shape. Sort of a discordant idea, but it seems to be held simultaneously in Americans' minds. That is Mr. Obama's real challenge. To turn that huge advantage he has with the middle class into a broad appreciation that what is good for the middle class is also what the economy needs, full stop. He has been saying that, but in the minds of the voters, it is apparently not sinking in. Ed, you have talked more than anybody from a progressive perspective in a really hard-nosed way toward the Obama campaign about getting smart and getting a focused message on the issue of the economy. How do you think President Obama does that tonight?
I think President Obama has a lot of weapons tonight, and I hope he uses them. He's got a record to run on. What he inherited and where we are right now is a great American story. No president ever inherited what he has. Just think if President Obama had inherited Bill Clinton's economy, a surplus. That wasn't the case. So I think the president needs to remind America where we were and where we have been and the accomplishments that we've made. As far as Mitt Romney is concerned, Romney can go after President Obama all he wants tonight. He's got some serious repair work to do after the 47% comment, because that was a real snapshot as to who he is. Plus, his private sector experience has got a checkered past. He's an outsourcer. He's a guy who's gone to the bottom line that hasn't been good to middle-class families. He can't put a number on exactly how many jobs he has actually created. But we hear these testimonials more and more all the time about the hardship the middle class has gone through because of the economic model that he presented in the private sector. That is a huge target for the president tonight, and I think he'll exploit it.
Steve Schmidt, from a Republican perspective, looking at that plus 19 number that President Obama's got on handling issues of the middle class, how does Mitt Romney chip away at that? Given his personal biography, how does he use policy, how does he use style to chip away at that?
Well, he needs to begin to make a case for himself tonight, which so far in this race he hasn't done. They didn't accomplish it at the Republican convention. Over the course of the month of September, they've careened from disaster to disaster. The hour's running late now. top line, the American people in enormous numbers will be watching this debate tonight, and the decision that they're starting to make, and in fact are starting to vote already in some states, do we fire the incumbent president of the United States and hire this guy? Is this the person who's able to move the country forward, to get our fiscal house in order, to restore prosperity to the middle class, to deal with dangerous situations all over the world? So, you know, all of the drilling, all of the preparation, all of it's out the window the second the two of these men walk on the stage tonight and begin to face off. And you really will get, I think, through the debates, a measure of their character. The American people will see them, they'll evaluate them. There's no spinners, no handlers, no commercials there to mitigate their weaknesses or enhance their strength. It's just the two of them on the stage, and the American people will start to judge tonight.
On that issue of character and how that emerges from this unfiltered setting that the debate is, do you think that's the most important thing that comes out of it, so that people get a sense of temperament and some of those intangibles about these men?
Absolutely. I think that the American people will feel you as much as they will hear you. One person said, and I agree, that if you turn off the volume and watch them and see who can make the connection, they win the debate. And I think that is why the president has an advantage with this format. As one that was in primary debates, presidential primary debates are different because you're not the one of the two guys that's going to be, or ladies that would be president. But your friend was the red light, because you could almost time your best line for the light's going to get me, so I'm going to score before, so you'd almost time it.
Yeah.
When you don't have the timer and you don't know what the other guy is going to do, you really have to think. The other thing is, as much as I would like to see the president go after Mr. Romney, he's also got to not come off like the angry man that they're projecting him to be and all that implies. So he's got to deal with Romney without looking like he's not the president but an angry guy that's protesting. But the real advantage I think he has, I think that we must remember that Mitt Romney, if I were using boxing as an example, I used to be a big boxing fan, he's never faced a top 10 contender since Ted Kennedy. All of the debates he had in the primaries, there was no one of the level of Barack Obama. If he goes in there thinking because he was up against the guys that he was this spring against President Obama, he's going to look like an amateur in a heavyweight championship fight. And all the president has to do is lay back and rope a dope. And I'm not calling Romney a dope, at least not until we see what he does tonight. but I think that clearly all he's got to do is lay back, because there's so many areas he's ahead that he doesn't need to risk bringing down, and he needs to build on those economic numbers and build them up. And then he can walk out of there tonight having wrapped this with a bow.
He can be confident but not aggressive.
Confident but not aggressive, but presidential. Saying I'm confident because look at where I brought the country and look at what we've done together. He's got to include it. It's not me. It's us. We did this together as a nation. Let's finish our task.
Chris Hayes?
I think one of the things that's most striking about those numbers is the one place that he's weakest, which is on the deficit. I think the big question of tonight is, and this is actually a question in how Jim Lehrer navigates this, where is the emphasis of the domestic policy discussion on the spectrum of deficit and jobs? If it is on jobs, that is where you want to keep the conversation as the president, because even though the unemployment number is high, there are many things that he can point to, from the Recovery Act to the blocked American Jobs Act to the auto rescue, that are concrete plans for job creation. If it's deficit, the president is in a weaker position because people just associate him with the deficits, with spending. That's been a very effective line from Mitt Romney. And it's actually going to be interesting to see whether Jim Lehrer subscribes to what I think is a Beltway obsession with deficits that is disconnected from the actual preferences of the electorate, which, as we see from those numbers, the president's doing poorly on deficits, and he's winning the race right now, and that tells you about something about where the electorate.
People vote more on jobs than they vote on
Absolutely.
deficits, despite the amount that the Beltway obsesses on.
I agree with you on that. The other thing about the deficit, this could rope the president into a very vulnerable position and get him into a conversation about what he's going to do if he's reelected when it comes to the big three: Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. I mean, is he really going to go big? And if
That's
Romney,
a big open question.
you
That's a
bet
good
it
point.
is. And if Romney can get him him in a position where he's got to say that he is going to go after those big three, I guarantee it. Well, of course, the president already got a letter last week from 29 senators saying, tell us where you stand on what you're going to do with these earned benefits entitlement programs, whatever you want to call them. That is a big opening for Romney tonight.
Yeah, and that's someplace where the Democratic base is going to be watching the president very closely, wanting him to
The Democrats want the president to stand strong.
If I'm Romney, I go there because with Woodward's book floating around saying that the president made certain agreements there, I go there and try to pin him down and try to get him to do that would erode some of his support. We'll see how skillful Romney is. The advantage we have is Steve is here with us.
Yeah.
Right now, there is a Romney strategist rushing a memo to Mr. Romney in his prep room saying the liberals on MSNBC say that where you should go. We'll see if they take this. All right, we got to take a quick break. Tonight is probably as big as it gets in terms of the persuadable audience watching tonight to make up their mind between these two candidates. It may not get bigger than it is tonight. We've got NBC's Chuck Todd straight ahead with the latest numbers. We've got Ezra Klein on deck. We've got a lot to get to. Stay with us. This is MSNBC's live coverage of the first presidential debate.